Hello and welcome to Cicerone Live. I'm Hannah Stevenson and thanks for joining me for our event this evening. We're welcoming Paddy Dillon to talk to us shortly about winter sunshine destinations. If you've got any questions at all for him, please email them in to live@cicerone.co.uk, or you can add a comment on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, and we will bring those through to Paddy. As many as we can get through, we'll try and get through those. We're talking tonight about winter sunshine destinations, which is a bit of a funny concept, but we were just thinking that in much of the Northern Europe and the US, clocks have gone back. It's feeling a bit dark, a bit miserable, and we wanted to daydream about some sunny walking. So Paddy's going to talk to us about some of his favourite places to go walking in winter. He's not going to talk about places that he doesn't know about. He's sensible like that. So we're not going to list every single possible place that you can go walking in winter. But Paddy's just going to talk about some of his favourite spots, places that he's really enjoyed in the winter time. So he's going to talk to us for about 20 minutes, and then we will have some questions afterwards. So please do send in your questions. If you haven't seen Paddy speak before, he has written about 80 guidebooks for Cicerone, and he is one of the most knowledgeable walkers possible. He really does know a lot, and he'll be really happy to answer your questions. And equally, if he's not sure about the place that you're asking about, then he will just say he's not sure. So yeah, send those questions in. We will get Paddy in now and welcome Paddy.
Hello, Hannah. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Paddy. So yeah, winter sunshine. What sort of things do you look for in a winter sunshine holiday?
Well, I think the first thing you've got to try and figure out is which places have dependable weather. You can't get guaranteed summer weather, sunny weather. It just doesn't happen like that. Nobody can guarantee anything with the weather these days. But if you look for dependable weather, there are places, and there are places that a lot of people know about, where the weather is fairly dependable, not only year round, but including the winter as well. And, you know, maybe one of the premier sunshine destinations would be the Canary Islands. People tend to go there in the summer, I know, but the winter time is fairly busy. People have cottoned on to the fact that, you know, the weather is pretty good there. They get plenty of sunshine hours. And even when, say, there's rain or a big storm rolls in, it's fairly limited extent. You know, the sunny days will return fairly quickly. And what that means is that with that particular island group, you've got any type of walking from sea level to the most tremendously high mountains. And it's all approachable pretty much for the whole winter. There are provisos there. I mean, El Teide on Tenerife is so magnificently high, you know, 3,700 meters, that any snow at all in winter is going to hit those slopes. But the rest of the island will never get snow on it. No matter how hard it snows on the top, it will never go down to sea level, not remotely anywhere near it. And then for the rest of the Canary Islands, snow on 2 of those islands is actually quite a rare event, and on the rest it's pretty much unknown. So that particular destination will be well known for having what I would call dependable winter sunshine conditions. The same would go for the Azores to a certain extent, although it is rather damper there. Madeira also, the only problem there would be that they do have a proper sort of wet season in the winter, but it's not continually wet. And it goes on like that, you know. I mean, you can name place after place after place, and while most of them are dependable, none of them are absolutely guaranteed to give you winter sunshine. So you always take that little bit, you know, as you find it. You know, if you go there looking for sunshine and it rains when you get there, just hang on, it may clear in a couple of days. If you went somewhere for 2 weeks and it just rained solid for 2 weeks, I think you would count yourself very, very unlucky. It shouldn't happen like that. It should be a case of decent sunshine, a bit of rain, and then more sunshine. So I'd be looking for places like that, dependable weather, not guaranteed weather.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got some pictures for us, and there's not a bad weather image in them, but that's maybe about your choice of images rather than that you can guarantee that it's always going to be sunny.
Yeah, I think even in my selection of pictures, there will be a grey, miserable, rainy day in there with cloud on the tops of the mountains. But, I tend not to take pictures in those conditions, but they'll be flanked on either side by the lovely sunny weather. And I'll say this about a rainy day. It does clear the air wonderfully, so when it stops, it's usually brilliantly clear, better than it was prior to the rain. So, but yeah, I'm quite happy to show some pictures. I've got a selection of just over 100, which cover about I think 27 islands, which are notable for their sunshine hours, stretching all the way from the Canaries, Azores and Madeira in the Atlantic Ocean through Malta, Majorca and Sardinia in the Mediterranean. And then just as a little throwaway one, where in the UK gets more sunny hours than anywhere else? Well, it's the Isles of Scilly. So I've included a couple of pictures of that as well. But yeah, I'm quite happy to go through those and show you what they're all about.
Brilliant. Let's get some pictures up and you can talk us through them.
All right. So I'll start with the Canary Islands because you can be adventurous here. There is a long distance trail that goes through all 7 of the Canary Islands. It's known as the GR131. It's consistently signposted throughout, and some of it is actually marked with markers at every 1 kilometre along the trail on at least 2 of the islands. But that's just to give you an idea what the signposting looks like. But let's see how it hops from island to island in January and February, which is when all these pictures were taken. So first of all, we go through Lanzarote, and you can see the flowers already. They're down there on the ground. There's plenty of greenery. The sky is blue. It's a lovely sunny day. And as you work your way through Lanzarote, you can go right over the highest point with minimal effort. It's one of the easiest islands to walk across. Would take you 5 days. Coming down through the fields, you're following dirt tracks. None of it is particularly steep or difficult. So if you're going to do a long distance trail, one that has 5 easy days to set you off is actually ideal. And it takes 5 days to walk across Lanzarote. You don't go over the hills, you go between them. And you get the impression already the sun is going to shine every day on Lanzarote. That's not quite true, but it's certainly true of these pictures. 50 kilometers done already. And, it's all been done with ease. And simple ferry connection will get you from Lanzarote to Fuerteventura, where the adventure continues. Now, of course, it's a bigger island. It goes to a higher altitude. The hills tend to be a bit more severe. But by and large, you're following dirt tracks and little paths that have been constructed, taking you through wonderful little villages, past fantastic heritage features, such as this little windmill here, and over the hills. And this is it in the depths of winter, this sort of warm, sort of mellow sort of landscape. And when the sun, beats down and it's not very windy, it's actually really quite warm. You're almost passing through desert landscape. This is actually known as El Hable, which just translates as the sand. And you follow this trail all the way through these stony, sandy hills to the very tip of Fuerteventura. A quick hop will get you across to Gran Canaria, where the adventure continues yet again, straight up into the mountains. The trail is not as yet marked as the GR131. but it's always been assumed that it's going to take this route through the mountains, following ancient routes that were built, 400-500 years ago, to get people from one side of the island to the other. And again, this is coming up to about the height of Ben Nevis, 1,000, say 200, 400 meters, and it's still wonderfully sunny. When the cloud does come, it tends to build up in the afternoon, and then in the morning it's all gone again. And even on the highest parts of Gran Canaria, I think it only snows on average once every 20 years. So, fairly dependable weather there. And you continue along the trail. It goes through the forested areas of Tamadaba, down to a ferry port, and straight across gets you into Tenerife, where you start with a long forested stage with mountains poking out of it. And then you start circling your way around El Teide, this enormous mountain in the middle of the archipelago. And you have the option, if you want to climb that mountain, but be warned, it can snow in the winter. And the strange thing about when it snows heavily in the winter is you would be surprised how many people in Tenerife are in possession of toboggans, skis, and snowboards. You wouldn't imagine they would have those things cluttering up the garage or the loft, but they do, and they know when it snows they can have fun. But by and large, it's a very dry, barren, rocky landscape. And you're traveling at about 2,000 meters in altitude through Tenerife, and then a long, long descent on a trail that's always obvious and well signposted, and a hop from Tenerife there in the background onto this island, La Gomera. And now you're walking by numbers. We're already at kilometer number 3. This is one of the islands that marks the trail with these stout kilometer markers. Going through La Gomera, you're probably going to hit some cloud at some time. The island is notable for having a cap of cloud on top. It actually has one of the best cloud forests in the entire world, and you don't have a cloud forest without a cloud. Apart from that, expect it even in the winter to be lovely and sunny and mild. Another rather complicated hop will get you to the island of La Palma, which of course is in the news these days with the volcano that's popped up on this particular range that we're looking at now, the Cumbre Vieja. The trail itself goes up over the top of the Cumbre. Now, the volcano at this point is off to the left and a long way downhill. So I'm assuming this trail is still open, but be ready not just for the possibility of, say, rain, but the possibility of volcanic ash pattering down on your head at this particular time. The volcano won't go on forever, but past volcanoes have already covered this landscape in liberal quantities of volcanic ash, as you can already see. But the signposted trail is easy to follow, although the route itself is particularly challenging. It does go to about almost 2,500 meters. You tend to pop out of the top of any clouds that form, right up into the high mountains, where it's almost always clear. And then a big long descent to end at Tazacorte. Again, if you look along the coast here, somewhere in the mid-distance is where that volcano is currently spilling lava into the sea. Now, there's only one island left, which is a tiny little island of El Hierro. This is the main ferry port, and there's no doubting when you leave that ferry port, you're climbing uphill. And you stay uphill following an ancient pilgrim trail, the Camino de la Virgen, all the way through El Hierro. These flowers are bursting out of the ground at the beginning of February. So this is the sort of conditions you would expect in winter on that trail, just abundant flowers everywhere. And then as you end up going down towards the end of the GR131, it would take you about 31 to 32 days to get to the end of the trail here, having started in Lanzarote. So that's what it's like doing a month-long, long-distance trail in the depths of winter through all 7 of the Canary Islands. Now, you could try the same thing over in the Azores. If I pull out of this particular shore and take you to see what the Azores look like in the depths of winter, because again, I've been there in January and February. There are 9 islands, and if I race through them, you've got San Miguel and these enormous lakes that sit in huge volcanic craters. You can walk around that in a day. You can explore other lakes that sit in volcanic craters. You can go and see geothermal bubbling hot water springs, cold waterfalls pouring down through dense forests. And it's got a wonderful coastline, very rugged, but equipped with trails that allow you to explore parts of the island. If you try and link everything together, you could get a long distance walk of sorts together, but it's ideal just for exploring short, easy trails day after day. And that's the sort of weather conditions you might expect in winter. Now, it does get rain, it does get mist in the winter, but it tends to blow through and then you get the sunny days again afterwards. This is a little island, Santa Maria. And again, you know, the lengths people have gone to cultivate the slopes are absolutely incredible. And there is a long distance trail that works its way around this island, taking you from the coast through the Red Desert and all the way back to the coast. And it would take you maybe 4 days, you know, so that would be an ideal one to fit into a week's journey. You know, you fly out there, do a 4-day trek around the island, find 1 or 2 other things to do, and then bail out. If you wanted to go hopping from island to island, the next one in line is Terceira, and it's a large island, but it's only equipped with about half a dozen short walks that are signposted. So this is the sort of scenery you might expect if you went from one walk to the other around the island. Again, lovely weather conditions if you pick your day. If it rains, there are plenty of heritage features indoors to explore. And then once it's sunny, make a plan to get out and do one of these walks, because the scenery and the colour and the greenness of the Azores is absolutely absorbing. This is what it looks like from the air. Lots of little fields. This is coming into the island of Graciosa, where you might expect to spend maybe 4 or 5 days exploring their trails. They've got one that takes about 3 days to get around the island. Wonderful flowers in the depths of winter. And because of that constant fact that you get rain showers coming through, it's always green. So wonderful, lush sort of scenery. This particular path is going into a deep volcanic vent deep into the ground, which is best visited in winter because in the summer it tends to fill up with carbon dioxide. But you can get all the way down into it in the winter because the weather conditions are ideal for removing toxic gases. And do meet the people. They're absolutely lovely, you know, and some of them live in these traditional houses. So that's an extra special treat. These people live on the island of São Jorge, and that one is notable for being steep on all sides. It's only the top bit is fairly level. So the villagers are either down by the sea or they're up in the clouds. But the scenery around the edge of the island is absolutely spectacularly rugged. This is the island of Pico, named after the peak that everybody's staring at in this picture. Pico is not only the highest mountain in the Azores, it's actually the highest mountain in Portugal as well. So well worth a bit of attention. And I don't make any apologies for including it time and time again in these pictures, because wherever you are on the island of Pico, you generally have a view of Pico. And it always seems to just attract the eye. And can you climb it? Yes, you can. You need a permit. You need to do as you're told. And can it snow up there? Yes, it can. But that just makes it all the more wonderful. But that's the only place it's going to snow in the entire Azores archipelago. There are 9 islands there, and that's the only place it's going to snow in winter. If we go to the island of Faial, the landscape you're looking at there literally erupted out of the ground, I think, in 1959, covered everything in ash, and to this day, hardly a twig or a shrub or a flower will grow on it. So you're looking at one of the youngest landscapes on the planet there. It caused a lot of upset to the people in the area. A lot of them emigrated to America and now are beginning to filter back into the area, you know, or their descendants even are coming back. But Faial is wonderful. The center of the island is a massive volcanic caldera with lakes in the bottom. And when you're walking around the island, there are lovely tracks and paths, open areas, forested areas, lovely sunny days when you get them in the winter. And it's well worth looking around some of the island capitals as well, because they themselves are just crammed full of heritage. If I go across to the island of Flores, it's a smaller island, but believe it or not, despite its small size, it has a long distance trail of about 3 days that literally picks its way along the cliffs, visits places tucked away in the hills that hold little lakes in rugged little combes, and even offers you the chance to go down a horrendous path in search of a hot water spring. Always remember, the Azores are geothermally active and occasionally will sprout a volcano, much as the Canaries is doing at the moment. The smallest of the Azores is called Corvo. And again, it's a fascinating place, but of extremely limited extent. If you go up to the main caldera, it looks like this. And if you go down to the town, it looks like this. And there's very little else to do apart from explore the town and the caldera. So don't book there for a week's holiday, or you'll begin to regret it after 2 days. That's the Atlantic islands. The odd one out is Madeira and Porto Santo, two little islands just about within view of each other. It's well worth the effort to go to Madeira in winter because, again, they do get the sunshine. This is Funchal, deliberately built on the sunniest part of the island and now climbing well up to about 1,000 meters above sea level. It's crazy the way that place goes. The scenery, the coastal scenery is stunning. The hills you can climb are really quite rugged. But of course, it's famous for those lavadas, those little horizontal channels cut across the mountains where you have a little path alongside to follow. Those lavadas will take you to the most amazing little places. They link villages, they link farms, they go from one rugged mountainside to another. But if you go into the mountains, beware, because it's one of those islands where it's lovely and sunny in the morning and then the clouds roll in the afternoon. But again, this is the scene in the highest mountains in the depths of winter. Snow is extremely rare in Madeira, and warm sunny days are actually quite plentiful there. A neighbouring island to Madeira is Porto Santo, and this is January in Porto Santo with all the clover out. And if you want to know where the best beach is in the entire Atlantic Ocean, it's probably this one on Porto Santo. It's 7 miles long and is absolutely stunning, but not visited by huge crowds. You know, there are no large resorts in the area. So that's the sort of scene you would expect there in the depths of winter. If we move into the Mediterranean, it's quite interesting. Malta is so far south, it's almost in Africa. Look at it on a map, you know, look at the Mediterranean, find tiny little Malta, and it's actually a very long way south. You know, it's more or less off the coast of Africa rather than part of Europe. The scenery around the edge is absolutely stunning. It's almost always cliffs, and rugged cliffs at that. There are wonderful bays to explore. There are heritage features such as defensive towers and castles, things like that. Lovely little beaches as well, and all very, very easy to get around. You know, the bus service runs all the time. The bus drivers get 3 hours off on Christmas Day to be with their families. That is all. So you will always be able to catch a bus everywhere in Malta, Gozo, but not Camino, because that island is just a rock. So this is what it's like on the earlier pictures. Some of those were from Malta. This is Gozo, and this is Camino, this little island with nothing more than a hotel resort on it and lots of rock. So this little boy is standing on Camino, and in the background is Gozo. And if you were to look to his left, you would see Malta. So you get 3 islands for the price of 1 in a simple visit. Staying in the Mediterranean, the further north you come, the more you're likely to run into proper serious winter weather. But Sardinia is actually quite good, so long as you stay somewhere near the sea or in the middle range hills. So this is the coastline of Ogliastra. It's absolutely stunning. If I just go back on that one, it leapt forward. That's the coastline of Ogliastra with its famous pinnacle, absolutely stunning. And if you go into the hills, you find these wonderful shepherd's huts made of nothing more than stones and branches. And most of the trails you would do at some point will come across one of these little pinetus. Um, you're not supposed to poke around inside them, just admire them from the outside. But it's wonderful to think that for centuries, shepherds have lived in very simple places like that. And again, you're looking at this in like February, and that's the type of weather you're getting. The mountains are terrifyingly steep in places, so please pick a decent trail. That's the whole point of having a guidebook, is it'll tell you what you're going to expect, and you can pick something within your abilities. If you're a rock climber, you can end up on the top of the pinnacle there. If you look very, very carefully right now at the top of the pinnacle, you'll see 3 people who've climbed to the top of it. None of them are me. I can only just gaze in awe at people who are capable of doing that. Does it snow in Sardinia? Yes, it does on the highest mountains in the winter, and it can be bitterly cold up there. But most of the mid-level and the coastline is absolutely perfect for a winter visit. Another one in the Mediterranean that I've had experience of in winter is Majorca. Now, again, if you're in the high mountains, it could snow. But if you pick your trails and choose your sunny days, you can be enjoying scenery like this in January, February, and not expect a lot of hassle with rain or storms or anything like that. There will be rain at some point if you spend as much as a week or 2 in winter in Majorca, but it will be rain that passes. So choose your mountain routes with care, because the mountains are exceptionally rugged. So if it's going to be a brilliant day, go for a brilliant mountain walk. And if it's going to be a lousy day, go for something, a bit more reasonable, where you're going to get a view, maybe down by the coast and go from beach to beach or something like that. But the mountain routes, even in winter when the sun is shining, are absolutely stunning and are not likely to be that busy. So, it's worth considering. The coastline is stunning, and there are paths available in many of the scenic places around the coast. But again, the mountains, if you know somebody who's going up the mountains who already knows the way around, tag along with them, because the Majorcan mountaineers, they are experts in their own terrain. Visitors tend to be a bit overawed at terrain like that. Usually there might be just the one way up and the one way down, and if you make a mess of it, you may not live to regret it. So travel with care. This is the Torrente de Pareis. It's a famous gorge walk on Majorca. My only advice is don't do it in winter, because if it rains, all the water will go through that at a rate of knots and will sweep away anyone in its path. So this is not a winter walk recommendation. This is a warning that not all walks are to be done in winter. And there are plenty of other walks that will take you into fantastic scenery with a chance of a high degree of sunshine, and will take you from village to village. And, you can link trails together, make long distance routes out of them, and have an absolute whale of a time. So this is basically what you would expect in the mountains in Majorca in winter. Occasionally it will snow in the mountains in winter, and it's a whole different ball game. If you imagine you can't see where the rocks and the holes are when the snow is down, then you need to think twice about whether the mountains of Majorca are for you. So we're coming so far north in Europe now that you're beginning to need to take care in the winter. But I've got this one other destination. Which part of the UK has the most sunshine hours? And it's by far the Isles of Scilly. These pictures are not taken in winter, but I did once make a winter visit. But this is the sort of scenery you might expect if it was a lovely sunny day in the winter. Low level, but rugged and incredibly scenic. And everywhere you walk is just rock and greenery and flowers and little places serving food and drink. The thing about visiting in the winter is there are very, very few other visitors there. If you go in the summer, it is absolutely full of people. It actually fills to capacity. It's like no one else can be accommodated. But in the wintertime, you would have a lot of these places to yourself, and everything is small, compact, scenic, easy to get to, easy to get away from, well worth thinking about. If you are given a good weather forecast for the southwest of England in the winter, I would say make your way to the Isles of Scilly and you would not regret it at all. Just take care in the sea, because when a winter storm comes rolling through, it can be severe. But yeah, that's me done with pictures. If anyone has any questions, Hannah will field them through to me. So
that was great, but yeah, a bit of a it's very grey and rainy and miserable in the northwest of the UK, where me and you are, Paddy. And
yeah.
I don't know how you're feeling after looking through all those pictures of beautiful sunshine, but I'm beginning to regret that I haven't got a winter sunshine holiday booked. What is it about islands with you? There's a serious theme to lots of your recommendations, and they are often islands. Why are
Yeah.
they your favourite
Well,
places?
I've been to some places in the middle of winter. Let me think of one just offhand. I've been to Nice in the middle of winter, south of France, and it's like being in the tropics. The sun is beating down. There's hardly anyone there, no one on the beaches, but the sun is beating down. But you try to walk northwards from Nice, and you'll get about a day and a half, and then it's alpine terrain with snow and ice on it. So the walking you could do in a place like that would be very, very limited in the winter. Now, an island, especially if you're picking an island going south in the Mediterranean, or one of those Atlantic islands off the coast of North Africa, gets much more dependable weather, where you can actually get away with a greater variety of walks than you can, say, in most parts of mainland Europe. If you go to somewhere flat in Europe in the winter, you can walk wherever you want, but it might be the Netherlands or something like that. You're not going to get the big mountains. You're not going to get anything like that. It will be physically possible to walk, but it won't be as scenically wonderful as a lot of other places. But the one thing I like about islands is they come in different sizes, but at the end of the day, every island is its own little self-contained world, and it's a world you can visit. If it's a small island, you can visit it for 4 days and come away with the feeling that you know it intimately. You've been everywhere, seen everything. If it's a large island, it might take you a month or two to explore. But then again, if you did go for a month or two and you explored it thoroughly, you still feel that you've looked everywhere, been everywhere, seen everything, and that you know it as well as anyone can know it. And that's what I love about islands. You know where the edge is. It's thus far and no further. If you're in a country, a landlocked country in the middle of Europe, you can just walk out of that country into a neighbouring country, and you could spend the rest of your life trying to explore Europe and never even feel you've scratched the surface of it. So yeah, that's the one thing about islands, is when you're done with them. They are manageable. They're great fun, and all the options are usually laid out before you. It's like that you can climb this, walk around the coast, visit these places, and that's it. That island is now finished. And if you're in an archipelago like the Canaries or the Azores, there's another island just to the left or right or north or south. You can just nip across, hop to the other ones and see what they're like. And I'll be honest with you, they all can be compared and contrasted with each other. No two islands are the same. They're all different. But yeah, I just love them.
So I was going to ask where would be your place to go to if you had to spend an entire winter season in one destination? But it sounds like maybe you've already done that. Have you done that before?
I have. I've spent so many winters in those places that I've just described. And then, because it feels like, the sun is shining, the sky is blue. It feels like springtime, even though it's winter. But then later on, those islands get too hot for me. If I went in late spring, I'd be thinking this is like a furnace. I can't cope with the heat and the humidity. So visiting those far-flung islands way to the south, the Azores and the Canaries, and Madeira as well, visiting those in the winter is like being in spring. You've got flowers, you've got sunshine, an occasional shower. But then when there's proper spring comes, it feels like summer to me. And I'm happy to move up to the Mediterranean then for what you might call proper spring, February to March, just about into April. After April, I'm finding the Mediterranean's getting too hot for me. So then I can come to Britain for our spring. And then I've done it a step further. I've gone up to Greenland and Iceland in the middle of the summer, and it feels like our spring. So it's like an eternal springtime that goes from January to September. And if you move with the seasons, you can do that, just enjoy the best that everyone has just by starting as far south as you can and working as far north as you can. And then all of a sudden you'll end up with like coming into October, November, December, where almost everybody's weather is a bit dreary, and even some of those far-flung islands, after the main summer, when it's been hot and humid, or maybe hot and dry, everything's starting to look a bit wilted and jaded, and you're actually waiting for their winter to kick in. A good lot of rainfall in December, and January is absolutely fantastic because all the flowers pop up again, everything goes green again. But yeah, it's interesting, but it's very difficult for me to pin down a place where I would just want to go and stay in the middle of winter, because I've done it so many times and all those places are just so different. They're all enjoyable.
And many of the places that you mentioned have got a season for holidays and for tourism. And we're talking about going in probably the off season for beach holidays and that kind of thing. So I mean, there's probably a benefit there. The flights are probably cheaper and that type of stuff. But what about the facilities? Are there still places to stay on, or are you having to camp when you go to these places?
Well, you can do almost anything you want. When I first went to places like the Canaries, it was almost always the case that you went as part of a package deal. Your flight, your accommodation, your food, your hotel was selected for you. But I made it my business to just go from little town to little town, village to village, especially the ones in the mountains, and find out, is there anywhere that you can just turn up on the doorstep, knock on the door and stay there? And I was delighted to find that there were tiny little hotels with maybe 4 rooms. There were little hostels, which are like an even more basic hotel with just, a bed, a pillow, and the chance of getting a cup of coffee and, a toasty sandwich or something for breakfast. And these places are available everywhere, but 99% of the tourists at the time I was doing that initially were staying in resorts as part of a package deal. And I was trying to do it independently. These days, because you can look up accommodation on booking.com, Airbnb, hotels.com, you look them up and you'll be presented with all the options that save you from doing a package deal. And you can actually pick where you want to stay in a place that's right for your budget, rather than being told where to stay. But it was the same everywhere. Madeira used to be the case of you couldn't just rock up and make your own way around from accommodation to accommodation. It was fairly controlled. They wanted you in a resort situation. But all that's changed. You'll get Airbnbs all over Madeira, and it's the same anywhere you go now. You can pick and choose your own places. And if you want to camp, places like the Azores are full of little campsites, and a lot of them are free of charge. They're very basic. You get water, you get a toilet, you may not get a shower, but you'll get a little patch of grass. So you put your tent there and nobody even wants money off you. and then you move on to the next campsite. And then you get places like Gran Canaria, which is full of like government operated campsites for which you need to apply for a permit, doing the paperwork in a foreign language to get a permit and abiding by the regulation is really hard work for someone who's not used to it. But there are places you can camp so long as you're willing to put in a bit of effort. And then if it comes to wild camping, yes, you can camp almost anywhere, but yes, it's also illegal. People do it all the time. You know, everywhere you go in these places I've described, you'll see someone with a rucksack with a tent and a sleeping bag on it. And you know they're not staying on a regular campsite. You know? But yeah, anything goes basically. The facilities are there year round in all these places, and they tend to be a lot cheaper and easier to find in the winter. Okay, places may close down in the winter, but those ones that are open will let you know that they're open and they're available to be booked.
Brilliant. Thanks. I hope that answers your question, Fiona. Fiona sent that one in.
Right.
Another question about how to get around, because somewhat famously, you don't take a car when you go to these places. So how do you find the public transport systems?
Well, first I have to find it. You know, that's part of the research, if you like, is I don't use a car. I won't hire a car. I just want to get the bus up there. And if the bus goes past all the walking trails, I'll tell people use this bus and get off at the bus stop at the start of the walking trail. That means you don't have to come back to the same bus stop. You can go over the mountain, down the other side, catch a bus on the other side, and it'll still bring you home. So I like to give people those options. And if there are buses up and down these mountains all day long, then I'll tell people they're there. If there's only one bus up in the morning and one in the afternoon, I'll actually look for walks that will tie in with that bus. And fair enough, if you want to hire a car and just dispense with the bus, that's your privilege. You can do that. Go up there, I'll tell you where the car park is. It's usually by the bus stop, and you can do the same walk anyway. But yeah, I've made it my business to find out where the buses are, how often they operate, and get a good grip of how dependable they are, because you don't want to be relying on a bus service where the driver can't be bothered to get up in the morning. These are all proper regulated buses, and the dependable services. But I do remember with the Azores, looking up as much as I could on websites about public transport and finding that there was one island which didn't have anything listed at all in terms of a bus service. And even on the Azores government website, there is no bus service listed for this one island. And then when you get there, you find out they've got a bus service. It takes everyone to the fish canning factory and to school. And they don't mind tourists jumping on board, pay a few euros, and you're part of the crowd, But it's great that, because you're traveling with local people. And I always find that fascinating, because if you're in a car, you're just sealed off from everybody around you. If you're on a bus and people are getting on and off, and they generally know each other, and if you can follow even a fraction of what they're talking about, it makes that destination so much more interesting. So yeah, I love the buses, and I think every one of those places I've written about has a bus service. The Isles of Scilly doesn't, but you don't need one because they are so tiny. But all the other islands basically have some sort of service, and it's because of the details I've given in the guidebooks, it's easy to find out where the timetables are. Yeah.
Brilliant. We have a question from James, who was doing the GR131 last year, and he got stuck on one of the islands.
Oh.
Actually, it worked out quite well for us, because he was bored, stuck on one of these islands, and just kept buying Cicerone guidebooks to keep him company. But he's heading off. In fact, he said he didn't know whether he'd be able to make it tonight, because he doesn't know whether he'll be there already. But he's wondering about the situation in La Palma.
Yeah.
He really wants.
Yeah. There's an exclusion zone around the volcano, but I don't know whether it impinges on the GR131.
Okay.
Because the volcano is a long way down from the ridge walk. But then again, whenever I've seen pictures, the ash seems to be blowing over the ridge. The lava's going down to the sea, the ash is going the other way. So there might be a restriction on there. But I just don't know, because I found it myself. I'm forever following the news, and I wish they would talk to me in maps. I want them to present me with a map of La Palma, put a big red line around, say no entry, and then I can work out where you can go around the edge. That's all I need. But I do know that the GR 130, which or 132, it's a low level long distance route that has got lava right across it. So obviously you can't do that. Obviously the bus doesn't go there anymore because the road is buried under lava. So that much is easy for me to spot. But spotting whether the GR 131 on the top of the island is still open, I don't know. I'm guessing the southern part is no problem and the northern part is no problem. There'll just be that bit in the middle which has a question mark hanging over it.
I think James was more, well, he was concerned about the route, obviously, because he's already had COVID stop him in his tracks. But I think he worried that he wanted to respect that they're going through a difficult time on the island, and whether his tourism would be welcome or not, because
there are volcano watchers. There are volcano watchers who are already there, and if they're there, they're spending money there. They're having to accommodate, feed, and keep themselves watered. And I'm sure that people who might be missing the usual tourists are quite happy to provide food and drink to a volcano watcher. But I suppose it's a case of, if people are going there and just basically enjoying themselves without going into restricted areas, I don't think there's a problem. I think they would prefer people just to continue visiting because it brings money in. But I don't think they want people who are going to go visit there to make trouble by go and walk on the lava when they've been told not to, and things like that, or poking around houses that people have vacated. That's obviously should not be done at all. But I don't think there's any harm in being there, enjoying walks outside the restricted area, and basically enjoying the volcano just as a spectacular feat of nature. But yeah, it'll all be made quite plain when you're in the area that this road is blocked, no further access. Just exactly which trails are affected is hard to determine, because like I said, I want them to show me a map with a big red line on it saying don't go in here, it's all closed. But I know for a fact that you can still visit La Palma. You can still, it may not always be possible to fly there, but the ferry will still go. That's not affected by ash fallout. But in terms of accommodation, it might be a problem in the area that's restricted, of course, but it won't be in other parts of the island. Everything else will be open for business. And if they've had a fall off in tourism, they'd probably welcome people going there. So yeah, it's something you have to sort of play by ear when you're there. I think that's the main thing. But I wouldn't be put off from going there. Personally, I'd be quite happy to go there. I'd find somewhere to stay. I'd get food and drink. I'd use whatever buses were available. But certainly when the bus grinds to a halt because lava's come across the route, I already know that there's a route affected there. So
yeah. So Gary sent in a question about Cyprus, which we do have a guidebook to Cyprus, but it's not your guidebook.
No, it's not a place I've been to. Yeah.
Right. That was his question, was have you been to the Troodos Mountains in Cyprus?
No. So I wouldn't, I mean, I've heard of them. That's all. I know people walk there, but I don't know what routes they follow. So yeah, if it's like that, if it's a complete unknown to me, the best thing is to chase up the information somewhere else. But yeah, there is a guidebook, of course, with Cicerone. That would be the ideal place to start.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think maybe it's even the same person. Another Gary, or the same Gary, has said, what about New Zealand for a longer winter stay?
Yeah, the thing about, say, winter walking in New Zealand is, yes, if you go there now, the weather is brilliant, but then it's not winter, is it? It's their summer. if you go for their winter, it'll be horrible. But yeah, I mean, there's that thing about the flip side of the planet is they're enjoying their summer. So it doesn't really count as winter walking. I mean, if you want to get away in the winter and have some sunshine, you can go right to the southern hemisphere and enjoy their summer sunshine walks. But they're not winter sunshine walks. You know, they're all in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah, you're quite right. We have been quite focused on our winter in the UK and the northern hemisphere, and places where the clocks have gone back.
No,
So yeah, but have you been to New Zealand?
I haven't. No. You know, like if it ever ended up on the top of my list, I'd be gone straight away. You know, because I have sort of various places I would love to go to, but there's always something else right at the top, always. And this past while, it's been a case of updating almost everything I've ever written, which stops me from going to anywhere new for a period of maybe the past 2 or 3 years. You know, I've not been able to go anywhere new because I've been updating everything I've already done. It's deja vu with an enormous long span of years of deja vu rather than just that little deja vu moment.
I think it's probably a surprise to many of our viewers, actually, that there are places you haven't been to, because
yeah.
I think so many people just see Paddy Dillon as the expert on walking everywhere. It is probably a shock that there's places you haven't walked.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean, ultimately, I'll get round to some of those places. But I do remember being interviewed once in Stanford's bookshop. And, you know, they said, have you got a list of places you want to visit? And I said, I had a short list when I walked into the shop. I said, and then I saw all the books you're selling. And now I realise that 1,000 lifetimes is nowhere near long enough to go to all the places I suddenly want to go to. Yeah, that was the worst thing about going into Stanford's, the entire world facing you from the shelves. And you know you can't even do a tiny fraction of it. But
yeah,
it's good to dream, though.
I remember when I first started at Cicerone, and I had these ideas that that certain areas, I just had a picture in my head that these are not areas that I'm interested in. And actually, it was one of your books. It was Lanzarote that landed on my
Right.
desk, and I just thought, yeah, boring. And then I opened it up and I flicked through, and I thought, damn, that's another one for the bucket list.
Yeah.
And it just keeps happening. Every month we have these books, and now, of course, I've heard of a lot more of the places, but it's
Yeah.
quite often a surprise when you, like, Tajikistan. Who knew how beautiful Tajikistan was going to be until I saw the Cicerone guidebook to
Yeah.
it. The bucket list is far too long for the amount of holidays that we can manage to take. Even you, but yeah, if anyone watching this reckons they'd buy a Paddy Dillon guidebook to New Zealand, I think he'd probably be quite keen to get that one commissioned. So do let us know.
Pop down and do it 1 week. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't take you long, would it? You walk quite fast. So speaking of a week, how long would you recommend to take for a winter sunshine holiday?
Well, if it's one of those places where it's pretty, you know, fairly well sort of, you know, almost guaranteed that you're going to get the sunny weather, almost, you know, a week you could just go somewhere and say at least 6 days of that are going to be brilliant. So I don't care about the grey day or whatever. I mean, it's hard to actually know that you're going to get that. But the thing is, if you're able to travel at fairly short notice, rather than planning something a year ahead, you know, it's all very well saying, oh, let's go to Madeira next year, you know, 12 months from now. It could be anything could happen before you get there. And then the day that you're actually traveling, they've got the most horrendous weather forecast. And it's like, you know, the storm of the century. And you're just stuck with it then. But then again, you know, if you were looking at, say, just grabbing a flight somewhere fairly easy to get to, say, like Malta next week, you could actually check the forecast for next week. And if it just says wall-to-wall sunshine, go for it. You know, I mean, it'll be a cheap flight. You'll get cheap digs. And then if you've got a guidebook, you know where the walks are. and you just enjoy all that guaranteed sunshine. But yeah, I would say that if you got a forecast a week ahead, that's how you get your almost cast iron guarantee. But trying to plan something a year ahead, you're taking a big chance. You don't know what the weather's going to be like a year ahead, even in a place where the weather's fairly dependable. All you can do is hope. But yeah, a week away in a place like Malta is easily done, you know, and a week in Madeira, easily done. You just grab the available flight, you know, from your nearest airport, and you go for it. Sort out your digs. You can do that on booking.com or Airbnb. You don't need to go to a tour operator. It's all very, very easy to do. And then if you don't want to be bothered with a car, you've got all the information about which bus companies go where. And they're all dirt cheap. You know, it's only us has expensive public transport. Everyone else has cheap transport.
Yeah. Yeah. Richard says, would the Tramontana Trail in Majorca be feasible in the winter?
Yes and no. If you get a good week's worth of weather, it's perfectly achievable and hugely enjoyable, even in the winter. But when the weather turns nasty, high in those mountains, it is really, really, it's quite dangerous in places. If you're in the highest part and it snows and the snow covers over the boulders and the potholes, you don't know what you're putting your foot on. You know, it's not like you're just walking on a gravel path that has 3 inches of snow on it. If that 3 inches of snow is hiding a 1 foot deep hole and your ankle goes in it and snaps, and you're on the most remote part of the trail, then it's a nightmare. You know, they do have a mountain rescue. They will come and get you. But, you know, if you get good weather in winter, hugely enjoyable trail. If it's bad weather in winter, I would say don't do that trail. You know, don't do it in snow. Don't do it in lashing rain, or definitely don't do it in a thunderstorm. But you know, even then, the weather is fairly dependable in Majorca. You know, if you go there and it says it's going to be good weather for the next week, you can get the bulk of that trail done in that week. And then maybe if it goes pear-shaped on the last day, that's all on the flat anyway. It doesn't matter. You can do that in the pouring rain, you know, not howling gale. It doesn't matter. But the mountain parts have to be treated with care and respect. That's all.
Yeah, that's very sensible advice. Right, we're almost out of time, but we've just got a quick question from Michael. How many days of the year do we still find you on the road? He says, are you still going strong after all these years? I admire your continuity.
Well, everybody knows it's been difficult to get out and about all the time this past 18 months. You know, I mean, I've done my level best, but a lot of it has been from my own doorstep during lockdowns. Anything from a 3-mile walk to a 15-mile walk, over and over again around the same old paths, you know. The last time I was out of the country was actually in Tenerife, the 2,400 meters high in Tenerife, checking some new trails. And that was literally as COVID was working its way into Europe. You know, so once I got back home from that, and that was a January trip in superb weather. Once I got back home, it wasn't long before everything was getting more and more serious. And then, of course, by March, we had the lockdowns and there was no traveling anywhere. But I haven't actually been out of the country since that trip to Tenerife. I managed to get some very good research treks done immediately prior to COVID that I'm now working through, you know, in terms of updating guidebooks. But one of them was the GR20 in Corsica, where I almost had to flip a coin. Am I going late in 2019 or early in 2020? And the coin landed on heads or whatever, and I went in 2019, and I'm so glad I did, because 2020, as we all know, wasn't a great time to be planning trips out of the country. Most of the time you couldn't, and the rest of the time it was really difficult. But yeah, in terms of being out and about, I mean, it's gradually coming back on stream. I already did this year a 1,100-mile walk around the perimeter of Wales, you know, and I did that so early this year that it's almost a distant memory at this point, you know, but that was to update my Wales Coast Path guidebook. And I just incidentally added Offers Dyke onto it as a way of joining the coast up at the end of it. So make a big circuit around Wales. But yeah, I'm still out and about. I'm still doing as much as I can. But yeah, it's been hard this past while. That's the only thing. It's a lot easier and, you know, able to get out now than it was.
Yeah, you're definitely not desk bound though, are you?
No, definitely not.
Right, well, thanks for that, Paddy. That was, as ever, a fantastic amount of information in a short amount of time. So thank you for that. Thank you to the audience as well for joining us and sending in so many questions. We will turn this into a podcast. So we'll just take the highlights from this hour and we'll put that into a podcast, which we will publish probably next Wednesday. There's also, you can catch up on previous live events and previous episodes of the podcast if you go to our website. The address is on the screen now. It's cicerone.co.uk. There's over 1,000 articles on the website. There's just loads and loads and loads to have a look at that's not just the guidebooks. And then, of course, there are guidebooks for almost everywhere we've mentioned tonight. So have a good look through those. Sign up to our newsletter so you can keep up to date with what we've got planned. And hopefully we'll either see you at the next live event or indeed out on the trail somewhere. Thanks very much for joining us and good night.
Hey, good night.